Hi, nonfiction readers. So I want to ask you a question to start our lesson today. So I want you to kind of think about if you've ever played a video game or a board game and you just feel like winning is just too easy, almost like you could just close your eyes and you would still be able to win the game. Well, that's kind of exactly how determining the main idea would be in the books that you used to read. Like, I bet if we opened up this book called Gorillas, and right away, you would be able to tell me what the main idea is. Okay, so let's try it. I'm going to open up to a page. I'll open up to this one called What Do Gorillas Eat? And I'll even start reading the first sentence. Gorillas are herbivores, which means they mainly eat plants. Right? The main idea is right in the heading, telling us what gorillas eat. And then specifically, the main idea is a pop-out sentence. It tells us right here that they eat plants. And then it goes on to give a little bit more information. Let's look over at this one. The heading's called A Giant Appetite. Gorillas spend about a third of their day eating. There's the main idea right there. So not only does the heading give us a clue that gorillas eat a lot, but then the pop-out sentence goes right on to tell us they spend most of their day eating. So what makes the text that we would pick up a little bit easier to find the main ideas is if the chapter titles and the headings kind of are very clear. They tell us exactly what the text is going to be about. And then we read the sentences and they just pop out. They tell us right away the most important key information. However, friends, main idea doesn't quite work this way when we start reading more complex nonfiction text. Usually in more simpler nonfiction text, the author will kind of tell you what the main idea is. It's right there. It's often sometimes the first sentence. But nonfiction's not going to work that way anymore, at least not most of the times. The complex nonfiction texts that you're going to be reading now, well, they're just complex. And you can say, sure, they're complex, but we still need to work together to find ways that we're going to be able to come across these challenges and find ways that we can use strategies in order to tackle reading these more complex nonfiction text. So the serious work today that we have to do today is trying to figure out exactly what makes these texts that we're going to be reading a little bit more complex. But I have a feeling that you're going to be able to handle it, and not only you're going to be able to handle it, but you're going to develop a lot of strategies in the coming weeks that's going to help you to tackle these harder nonfiction texts. So today, I want us to explore some ways that nonfiction texts get complex, and I want us to focus mainly on main idea. So we're going to study a text to kind of figure out the answer to this question. And the question that I have for you, and I want you to think about today, is in what ways does main idea become more complex? So I want you to think about that question. You might even want to pause the video and jot that question down in your reader's notebook because it's going to be a really important question that we're going to focus on today. In what ways does main idea become more complex? All right, and we're going to read a little section of our text when lunch fights back. I'm going to open up to page 8. And I know that yesterday when we were orienting with the complex text, we noticed that even the text features, the headings, the chapter titles really start to get a lot more challenging. And so we're going to dive right back into that same text today. And I want you to focus on that question of how main idea is going to get more complex. I'm going to open up to page 8. And as I'm reading it out loud, I want you to follow along. Have that question in mind. And if you have some ideas as I'm reading these sections, I want you to jot them down in your notebook. The scene behind, the science behind the story. Hagfish aren't fish, despite their name. They are primitive eel-like animals that have been roaming the ocean for millions of years. Hagfish have no jaws and no backbone. What they do have, however, is slime. Douglas Fudge should know. Whew! It already feels like main idea is becoming complex here, right? It's so much tougher than that gorillas text that we were just reading. So if you have noticed anything so far, I want you to take a second and jot it down. Let's keep reading. Fudge is a biologist at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada. He has been studying hagfish and their slimy defenses since 1997. The slime is amazingly effective at preventing hagfish from being eaten by fish predators, including sharks, said Fudge. Hagfish release slime the moment something tries to bite them, or even just bothers them. Fudge has been slimed many times while gently handling hagfish in his laboratory. What are you already noticing? Anybody have any ideas about ways that main idea is becoming more complex? Raise your virtual hand if you have an idea about how the text might be becoming more complex. Go ahead and put your hands down. Thank you to the friends that were willing to share their ideas, right? So we've already come across some ways. I heard someone say that main ideas, we can't really find them in the headings and subheadings like we used to. The headings and subheadings are very misleading. Unlike the gorilla story where it said, what do gorillas eat? And we knew the main idea was going to be about the food that gorillas ate. In this chapter, the heading doesn't really help. Like here, the heading is the science behind the story, and it's the same heading in every single chapter, so that's not helpful at all. So a lot of times in complex text, the headings and subheadings are going to be very misleading, and they're not going to help you to figure out the main ideas. The second thing that some of you are already probably noticing is that there's a lot of main ideas. There's not just one anymore. So in like our gorilla text, each paragraph or each section only had one main idea, but now we're starting to realize that there could be several main ideas on one page. Okay? So think about how that's different from some of the simple text that we read in the past. All right, let's finish this section of text. And let's look and see if we can find any other ways that main idea becomes more complex to add to our thinking. The slime comes from special glands in the hagfish's skin. The glands actually release two ingredients that combine to make slime. One ingredient is slippery mucus. The other is thread-like fibers. Hagfish slime is the only slime we know of in nature that has such fibers, Fudge explained. So what else are you noticing about how main idea gets more complex? Take a second to think, jot it down. And I'm going to look for maybe one more virtual hand that has maybe one more idea for us to share. All right, you can go ahead and lower your virtual hands. Thank you to my friends who shared their ideas. And I heard a lot of you kind of sharing the fact that sometimes the main ideas are kind of hidden. They're not right there. They don't pop out like they did with some of the simple text. And so we call them implicit. Implicit ideas are ideas that are hidden. And so a lot of times when we are reading a more complex text, we have to read it, we have to figure it out. We have to dig through all the facts and we have to dig through all the details in order to figure out exactly what the main ideas are because they don't pop out anymore. They're hidden. They're implicit. So students, today we discovered a lot of ways that main idea is going to be complex as we start to read more complex nonfiction. As you read today, I want you to use this new knowledge to kind of help you start to figure out the main ideas of the text you're reading. So there's a chance that as you're reading, you're going to start to notice that nonfiction text gets complex in other ways too. And if you notice something, go ahead and jot it down because that might help us in some of our future lessons. Okay. All right. Don't forget to log your reading. And then I want you to open up those nonfiction texts and I want you to start flagging the pages, do some stop and jots of pieces and parts that are really worthy talking about. and happy reading.